Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Uncinched podcast, the podcast where we uncinch what's really going on in the horse world.
And today's episode is guaranteed to make you feel all the warm and fuzzies. We're celebrating the feel-good moments that make us love horses. Today's focus is all about the underdogs, the overlooked, the misfits, and how they went on to become absolute legends.
Hell yeah! We're chatting about the horses who defied every odd, broke every stereotype, and reminded us that it's the heart of the horse that will always beat out a pedigree or perfect conformation. Get ready for some goosebumps, because today we're proving that the perfect horse doesn't exist, but great ones sure do, and you just might have one out in your pasture.
If you know the feel of reins in your hands and the quiet bond between horse and rider, then you know some moments can't be put into words. That's where Grab Mane Photography comes in. Specializing in equine and Western lifestyle photography, Grab Mane captures the spirit of the horse, the heart of the rider, and the beauty of life lived close to the land. From barnyard candids to golden hour gallops, every frame tells a story, one of connection and authenticity.
And right now, podcast listeners get 25% off their first session. Whether it's you and your horse, your family photos on the ranch, or just a fun photo shoot idea, Grab Mane has got you covered. Just visit the Grab Mane Photography website in the link through our show notes and mention the code UNCINCHED2025 when you reach out.
All right. Before we dive into the incredible stories of horses that defied the odds, let's talk about something that I think all of us have felt at one point or another in the horse world. And that's the pressure to chase perfection.
Oh yes, whether it's flawless conformation, exceptional pedigree, and bloodlines, or horses that walk out of the womb ready for the show pen, there's this unspoken belief that you need a perfect horse to succeed.
Exactly. And while yes, good breeding and textbook correct conformation can definitely set a horse up for success, they aren't the end all be all. If perfection was all it took to be successful, every high-dollar, professionally trained horse would be a superstar. But we know that's not always how it works.
Some of the greatest horses I've ever seen or worked with didn't look like much on paper, honestly. They had quirks or a history that made them a little spicy. Sometimes things aren't textbook perfect, and horses with big hearts, grit, and someone who saw past the imperfections to give them a shot is all that was needed.
When we're constantly told we need a certain type of horse to succeed, we miss out on the ones who maybe aren't wrapped up in a fancy package and have a little body quirks, but have all the right stuff on the inside. Often, it's those horses who end up teaching us the most too, and taking us on a journey we never expected.
I mean, I have a horse who's towed in, and he's gone on to do some pretty amazing things with me. His conformation issue hasn't impacted our ability to compete and win a reserve championship.
Whoop whoop.
Whoop whoop. Shout out to Peter.
Well, the truth is, success isn't about stats. It's not about what your horse's papers say or how symmetrical their body is. In many ways, it's about the partnership, the connection you build, the trust you earn over time. That's what truly takes you places.
So, if you're listening to this, and if you've ever felt like your horse isn't enough because they don't check off every box, or you're not sure they'll make it because someone told you they're not fancy enough, we're here to tell you, throw that damn rule book out the window and don't listen.
Truly. That's why we have this episode. That least likely to succeed label, think of it more as most likely to prove you wrong. And we're going to show you that here in today's episode. So let's dive right on into it. Some of the greatest underdog stories in horse history. Ones that remind us that what can happen when you stop chasing perfection and start believing in possibilities.
All right, guys. So we're going to take you down a trip through memory lane, and we're going to talk about some iconic horses who were underdogs. The first one that we want to talk about is the legendary Seabiscuit. Seabiscuit has a movie. If you've never heard of it, go and watch it. It's great.
It's so good.
It's so good. So if you don't know who Seabiscuit was a racing thoroughbred in the 1930s who was considered a little too small for a thoroughbred. He was around 15 two hands high, so based solely on the fact that he was smaller than the average thoroughbred, he had the odds stacked against him. Seabiscuit raced as a 2 and 3-year-old and showed minimal potential, and as a result, his owners had entered him into a few claiming races. But he had not found anyone willing to buy him until a new face in the racing world came along. It was Charles S. Howard, who was a businessman who wanted to establish horse racing on a bigger scale on the west coast of the United States. He and his trainer, Tom Smith, saw Seabiscuit, and they both saw something in the little bay horse. So Tom, Charles' trainer, urged Charles to purchase Seabiscuit, which he did for $8,000. Tom was known to be, in that time, a racehorse glow-up guru.
He was a horse riding glow-up influencer?
Yeah, influencer. Hashtag yes.
Influence.
And Tom was known for having quite a unique, unorthodox training methods that kind of stood out from everybody else. What he would essentially do was he would take discarded racehorses and retrain them to race again. And that's exactly what he did with Seabiscuit. So after some training, Seabiscuit began racing again, and underneath Tom and Charles, he finally began winning. He slowly became a symbol of hope to the people during the Great Depression. People felt connected to Seabiscuit's story as he had so much stacked against him, but all it took was a few people to have belief in him for him to become successful. The most notable success in Seabiscuit's career took the world by surprise as he beat Triple Crown race winner War Admiral by 4 lengths. Seabiscuit went on to be the American Horse of the Year in 1938. After he retired, he went on to sire 108 foals, and he had an estimated over $400,000 in earnings. From $8,000 to $400,000 is honestly wild in my eyes.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever been that valuable. I depreciate over time, actually.
Mm-hmm. But I just love that story because, you know, he was a little guy. He wasn't showing much success. And then it just took a couple people who believed in him and a different training.
Yeah, he had a different environment,
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed to help him. Because, like, sometimes it's the environment that's setting us up for failure,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I think this story really shows that.
Yeah, totally. So go Seabiscuit. We love Seabiscuit.
The next one is a really well-known horse, obviously. It's the horse called Secretariat. Secretariat was a horse that kind of competed around the 1970s, and he was from the US. He was interesting because he wasn't an underdog in the sense of the way he was developed or how he looked. In fact, he was considered the closest thing to perfection at the time. Secretariat's story is an underdog story because of how he came to be. There's a lady named Penny Chenry, and she left her life in Denver, Colorado, in an attempt to save her ill father's farm, despite her whole family's suggestion of just like sell it off and move on. She was super unsure, but she decided to breed. In a chain of events, Penny decided to get a horse bred by the sire Bold Ruler and actually got Secretariat in a coin toss through this offspring exchange. She was unsure if the foal she now owned would ever even be a winner. They were just trying to change kind of the bloodlines and see what happened. Right away, when he was born, he was considered to be the closest thing to perfection a horse could be, conformation-wise, musculature-wise, all of it. Secretariat's really cool because he went on to be the 9th winner of the American Triple Crown, and he still to this day holds the record as the fastest ever in all 3 categories. So if you think about how many years the Triple Crown has been around, he's dominating. That's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
He also became the first horse to ever win the Kentucky Derby in under 2 minutes, which is incredibly fast. If you don't actually know much about derbies or the track, it's a really good time. While he came from great lineage, Secretariat did have some health problems early on, and they weren't sure if it was going to affect his ability to race. In the end, he obliterated records, And the one that most people know about is how he had a 31 length lead to any of the other horses in the competition at the Belmont. He won, obviously, which is now considered the greatest race ever run by the thoroughbred racehorse, which is pretty
Insane.
cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So Secretariat unfortunately did pass away. Not super young, but not old either. He died at the age of 19 in the 1980s, in 1989 to be exact, as a result of laminitis. And it was really rapid from around Labor Day that year, and then they had to put him down around the 4th of October. So that's a pretty fast progression for people who may not know much about laminitis. And it just goes to show, too, that even if you have perfect conformation and you have all these perfections that people deem, there's still things that can happen out of control that just affect life later on.
Mm-hmm.
But something that's really cool is that they did do an autopsy to make sure what kind of happened. It was part of the insurance. You had to open up the horse and confirm that it was laminitis for the insurance. And because of that, they actually found out that Secretariat had an abnormally large heart. He had such a big heart that it weighed about 22 pounds. And for anyone who doesn't know much about horse anatomy, a horse's heart typically weighs about 8 to 9 pounds. So that's like 2.5 times bigger than the average horse's heart. The other thing that was really interesting about that is with an enlarged heart like that, you often see defects. There was none. He had perfect musculature of his heart. The ventricles all worked perfectly. The chambers were good, which is really cool. Secretariat not only went on to just live in our minds as a record holder, but he earned around $1.3 million on the track alone. That doesn't include his stud fees. That's just on the track. And it's a pretty cool story if you think about it, because, you know, Penny was coming in trying to save her father's farm and see what happened, and now she has a record-holding horse with massive earnings.
Mm-hmm. That's, if you also didn't know, this horse also has a movie dedicated towards it.
Yeah.
Secretariat.
Oh, and before we forget, you know, the Kentucky Derby, the 151st Kentucky Derby was this year. It was just about a month ago. All the horses in that year were all descendants of Secretariat, which I think that's the first time that's ever happened. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a cool story that they all come from this racing legend.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. So go watch the Secretariat movie. It's so good. It's so good.
Honestly, we're just here for movie recommendations for you.
Podcast of the movies. Okay, next one on the list is a little bit unique. It is Endo the Blind. So if you have never heard of Endo the Blind, Endo is a blind Appaloosa gelding who lost both of his eyes when he was 8. And he lost his eyes due to moon blindness, cataracts, and glaucoma, of all things. Endo's owner had to make the incredibly hard decision to remove both of her horse's eyes, as he was experiencing some serious pain and complications from his eye issues. And she was not sure how he would handle life after losing a very important sense, which was obviously his sense of vision. After he had his eyes removed, Endo started off very nervous without his vision, but his owner Morgan went slowly and started doing simple things like walking around the barn. And pretty quickly, Endo's confidence came back, and he has gone to do some pretty incredible things for your average horse, let alone a blind horse. Endo has jumped, Endo has tons of training, and he actually has 3 Guinness World Records.
Wow.
Crazy. One of them being he has the highest free jump by a blind horse, 3 feet and 5.73 inches. The second world record he has is the most flying changes by a blind horse under 1 minute, and he got 39 changes under 1 minute.
That's nuts.
That's nuts, even for a regular not blind horse.
Yeah, regular old Joe.
And then the last one is he has the fastest time for a blind horse to weave through 5 poles, and that's 6.93 seconds.
That's really good. That's like so wholesome.
Isn't it? And Endo the Blind is actually still alive. I think he's around 25, and he has quite a large social media following, where his owner Morgan shares what she and Endo are up to. She does Liberty with him. She videotapes her trail rides. She just videotapes and shows everybody how strong her and her horse's communication skills are together, because this horse can't see anything, and he solely relies on her and his trust in her to navigate through life. And the fact that he's alive, I think if you have a phone and you want to go see some pretty incredible horsemanship, look up Endo the Blind. He'll come up right away, and please take a look at their social media, because the stuff that this horse can do is truly mind-blowing.
You know what? We'll actually put this in the description. We'll put their little Instagram tag so that you know what you're looking for. Because, yeah, it's something super cool to check out. Just even to find out how she's doing it and her story a little bit more in depth. It's just a beautiful story.
It's so cool. It's so cool.
Our next story is going to be about a horse named Snowman. So Snowman was in the 1950s, and again, this was in the U.S. He was a former plow horse that was put into a slaughter truck, and he was bought for $80 by Henry DeLeve. The initial intent for him was to be a quiet horse for beginners to take lessons on. So Snowman just kind of hung out, did lessons for a bit, and then DeLeve decided, I'm going to sell him to my neighbor. He's going to work better there. And that's when he realized that Snowman had quite the little talent for jumping, as he decided he was going to jump the high fences to return to his home, because he decided, I don't care if you think I should be over here, I want to be with you. Henry did buy him back and began training Snowman as a show jumper. This story is really cool because Snowman was so quiet. As we've said, like, he was supposed to be, a lesson horse for beginners. So he got to have some really cool things done with him. He was even photographed performing really unusual feats, such as jumping over other horses, and his calm disposition really made him a favorite and kind of a social media darling. So Snowman actually went on to TV, and one of his most notable roles on TV was when he went on The Tonight Show with the host Johnny Carson at the time, and he was sitting on Snowman's back. Like, Johnny Carson did a full interview on Snowman's back on live TV, which I think was pretty cool, and he was just chilling. Snowman also became a national champion in show jumping. He won the United States Open Jumper Championship both in 1958 and in 1959. He also won a lead line class and an open jumper championship on the same day, which is pretty impressive. He just really vibed. Then Snowman kind of took a turn because he was so popular, where he became a Breyer horse model. And that was back in 2005 on the Gem Twist mold, which is no longer manufactured if you're trying to look for it. However, in 2013, he was reintroduced in the Breyer line as the Oedicus mold. So the 2013 box read Snowman Show Jumper Hall of Famer. So that's pretty lovely. And I think it's pretty ironic that Snowman was bought for $80 and he went on to earn around $5 million.
That's insane. Insane. Okay, so the next one comes from the Western way of life, and it is a very special barrel horse called Scamper. So Scamper was a Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame barrel horse back in the 1980s and 1990s. Scamper's riding career started a little bit rough. After bucking somebody off and hospitalizing them, Scamper was seen as difficult to train and was nearly given up on. As a result, he was resold numerous times through auctions until he landed on the James family feedlot in New Mexico after being purchased for just over $1,000. Charmaine, the young daughter of the feedlot owner, was looking for a new barrel horse, as hers had just broken its leg. And her father mentioned the little horse in the feedlot for her to go and try. All he said was, Don't lope him right away or else he'll buck. Well, she got on him and kicked him right into a lope, and he tried to buck. But she just laughed it off as she felt that this horse wasn't going to hurt her, and off they went. When she first started racing him, he took to barrels very easily. Charmaine's father would say he sure wants to scamper around those barrels, which is where he got his nickname, Scamper. Scamper and Charmaine went on to win 10 consecutive WPRA world titles, even once with no bridle after the bit broke mid-run. They won their first ever title when Charmaine was only 14 and Scamper was 7. Scamper and Charmaine earned over $1 million during their career, and Scamper lived until he was 35.
Holy cow.
Insane. And another fun fact about Scamper is that he was cloned so that Scamper's lineage could go on. He has a clone, and they stud him out.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't even know you could clone horses.
I know, it's pretty crazy. Science
I'm learning
rules.
things. Learning things every day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, moving on from cloning, I have a fun horse here. His name is Gunner. That's kind of his known name, but his registered name was Colonel Smoking Gun. What's really cool about Gunner is he was born deaf, but that didn't stop him. He was still, he was going to do what he was going to do, and he is huge in the reining world. Gunner was deaf and he was a little quirky, but he had this massive stop that made him really unforgettable in the reining ring. Gunner's first major success was actually tying for the reserve championship title in the NRHA Futurity in 1996. He also tied for reserve champion at the National Reining Breeders' Classic in 1998. So he started right off the bat getting going, and he was on fire. He did a lot of competitions and won quite a few of them, despite the odds that he was deaf, which does impact kind of how maybe a horse reacts to different things, because they're losing one of those senses and they don't really know maybe what's going on, and something can look a little bit more scary. So I think that's really cool. Gunner also went on to win the United States Equestrian Team National Reining Championship in 2001. He went on to become a $1 million sire in 2007, not only because of his milestone achievement of his offspring's winnings in the NRHA, but also due to the original skepticism of if he should be bred due to being deaf. Because you know what? You don't know if that's going to carry on and if that's going to affect the rest of his lineage. So Gunner was inducted into the NRHA Hall of Fame, which is pretty cool, and he's been recognized for his significant contributions to the sport, mostly as a sire.
Super cool.
This one is a really cool story for me to tell, and I'm really excited to share because I have a bit of a personal connection with this horse. So this horse is none other than Big Ben, and if you're Canadian, you probably know who this horse is because he is a Canadian icon. Mm-hmm. So Big Ben was a very big horse, hence the name, and actually his first name was originally Winston, but obviously he got his name now. It's really unclear, though, where Big Ben got his height from, because his dam was only 15 hands tall, and his sire was 16'2". So nobody really knows how he got so big, because there was nobody in his lineage before that really had anything past 16'2".
And what was his height?
His height was 17.3 hands tall.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a big horse, especially compared to his parents.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So as I said, he was originally named Winston, but he was purchased from Belgium by a Canadian rider that most people know of. His name is Ian Miller, and he was purchased for $45,000, and that's pretty low in kind of the show jumping world. But he went on to win over $1.5 million, which is pretty cool. Honestly, with Big Ben's sheer stature and size, he had originally been seen a bit too clunky and uncoordinated to compete as a show jumper. However, his true defining the odds moment came from surviving 2 bouts of really severe colic, and an accident in which his trailer was overturned on a highway after having a head-on collision with a car in 1992. And this is where I say I have a bit of a personal connection. So back when that trailer accident occurred, my grandfather, he was an RCMP officer. He was actually one of the first people on the scenes, and he had to make the very difficult decision of knowing what to do in this situation. So there was quite a few horses. I think there was about 4 or 5 horses there. And if I remember correctly, 2 had died. 1 became unrideable due to its injuries. And a 4th, I don't think would ever get back into a trailer again. And that left Big Ben also being in kind of a really bad predicament. It was a trailer that was overturned. And from what I know of the story, my grandfather was asked if he should be put down. And he was like, I don't want to make that decision. I feel like that's too big of a decision with way too popular of a horse. I don't want to be a part of it. But he did not get put down. And the really cool thing about that is that just 2 months later, after this massive, horrific accident, Big Ben actually went on to win the Grand Prix.
Talk about resilience.
Yeah, exactly. You know, other things that Big Ben has done, is that in 1999, the year I was born, he was recognized as a Canadian icon, and he also got his own stamp from the Canadian Post. So you could buy his stamp for when you were doing letters. I know some of us are a little young here that maybe not remember that letters used to be like a massive thing. It was not just emails. So you got his own stamp. That was a big accomplishment. He also is one of 2 horses, and there's only 2 horses, the other one being Racehorse Northern Dancer, to have been added into the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame, like the athletes one too, you know. So that's a really cool thing and a big honor. He's also a Breyer horse, and he also was the first horse to win 2 consecutive World Cup final titles, one in 1988 in Gothenburg, and the other one in 1989 in Tampa, Florida. So that's cool. He has won quite a few things, but he won the Spruce Meadows Derby 6 times in 8 years, and he only missed it in 1 year, essentially. So from 1986 to 1989, he won those ones, and then he didn't win the 1991, but after that, he won the 1991 to 1993 champion. Really interesting, because that's pretty cool to be almost completely back to back. He is also a multi-Grand Prix winner and the Canadian National Show Jumping Champion of 1988, 1991, and 1993.
I think these stories are so important to reflect on because I think oftentimes the horse world gets caught up in trying to achieve perfection. We all think we have to have this perfect bloodline or this perfect conformation in order to get great things done with horses. And while those things really do matter in lots of cases, underdog stories are so important to remember in cases where we get a horse who's maybe struggling a little bit, or maybe who's a bit more difficult than the average to deal with. Or maybe you're someone who simply can't afford a horse with a certain pedigree or conformation. These stories prove to us that greatness can still be achieved. You just have to believe and be willing to change.
On the other side of the coin, most of us are riding as a hobby. Many of us don't compete at the highest levels of the sport. So why does your horse have to be the top of the top? I just want to think about that. I think it's something to chew on and really think about. Having this expectation that they have to have these buttons, bloodlines that turn heads, and perfect textbook body measurements seems a little unrealistic, doesn't it, when we say it out loud? Why pass up on a potentially amazing horse that can do everything you want, and often more, just because they aren't textbook perfect?
I really do think sometimes we get a little too caught up in trying to fit this horse into a specific mold, when in reality, just like us, horses are all individuals and they need to be treated as such. And sometimes that's making hard choices like rehoming, switching trainers, or changing your own training methods completely.
You know, look at some of those stories, like Snowman, for example, coming as a plow horse and finding his calling in jumping. That's a pretty cool situation. And if he hadn't found a different home that could foster that, it would have never happened.
Same thing with Seabiscuit. If Seabiscuit didn't find his two people that believed in him and a trainer who had a little bit of a different method, he wouldn't have defied the odds and done the unthinkable. In addition, he was like a national heart horse where he kept people going and inspired people who weren't horse people. He went on and showed people that you don't have to be the biggest, you don't have to be the strongest. You just have to have someone who believes in you.
He was a symbol for hope in a really dark chapter in history for a lot of people. To add to that, you know, if we look at ourselves as riders, we also have quirks and we have different measurements and body types, which is totally okay. I want to make sure that comes across. If we judged riders, though, as we did horses and see if they're fit, and I put that in quotations, to compete, then not a single one of us would be riding. It's just a fact. We all have so much going on kind of in our lives that it would make it so that only one type of person could compete and nobody fits that mold. So why would we make our horses fit that mold? You know, we all have flaws. And it's not only okay, but completely normal. And that goes for horses. Just many of these horses in these brief stories, there's so many more stories that we could tell. You can also overcome many things with a little bit of work and a whole lot of try. That's the biggest thing, is you have to be willing and the horse has to be willing.
Mm-hmm. If you see or feel how big your horse's heart and try is, but maybe he or she just hasn't gotten its ducks in a row, keep believing in it. Different flowers bloom later than others, but it's so important to continue to reward and believe in your horse's potential, especially if you're getting that heart and try. Yeah. And if you aren't getting that heart and try, instead of discarding that animal, why not try to find what inspires that horse to try? The more we seek for inspiration and good, in my experience, the quicker we find it, versus always seeing the negative.
Honestly, this is a great way of saying, like, embrace curiosity, embrace flaws, both your own and your horses, and keep riding, keep smiling, keep enjoying your time with them, because that's truly what matters. At the end of the day, what matters is that both you and your horse enjoy each other's company and have fun. It doesn't matter if their conformation is perfect or not.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if they're not the tallest, they're not the smallest. If your horse has heart and has got energy and effort, and if it believes in you and you believe in him or her, it's amazing the things that you can accomplish.
And you know what? You may not be at the top of the barrel. You may never win that competition, but who cares?
Yeah.
Truly, who cares? If you're enjoying it, they're enjoying it, who gives a crap?
Mm-hmm. Period. Okay, well, today turned into a little bit of a history lesson, but we hope that after hearing all of these underdog stories that you're maybe feeling a little bit more inspired, a little bit more excited. Maybe you want to go to the auction and buy the saddest looking horse there.
Well, within reason, Taya, come on.
YOLO, do it. Hopefully we've left you feeling a little bit more proud of your imperfect, perfect, incredible horse.
Remember, it's not about how they look on paper or where they were trained. It's about what they have in their heart, and most importantly, what you bring to the table as a rider or caregiver. Who knows? The underdog might just be the greatest teacher you have.
Once again, we want to thank our sponsor, GrabMade Photography. We are so grateful for their support and kick-ass photography skills. If you are looking for a photographer that can execute your equine vision, or you want memories that will ride with you for a lifetime, book in with Brooke from GrabMade Photography.
And don't forget to use the code UNCINCHED 2025 for 25% off your first session. That's a lot of money, la moolah. So check it out.
Check them out. If you love what we're doing and you want to support Uncinched, we're open to sponsors and advertisers who vibe with our vision. Whether you're a small business, a big brand, or somewhere in between, we'd love to chat. Just shoot us a message on Instagram or email us at uncinch.podcast@gmail.com.
All right. Now, should we tease them with some goodies?
Let's give them a little teaser on what's happening
All
next
right.
time.
So next time on Uncinched, we'll have our very first guest in the saddle.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. We have none other than Jamie DeWitt. Jamie is the head coach and director of the Calgary Stampede Show Riders. And if you don't know what that is, it is a youth musical ride team that's based in Calgary, Alberta.
Jamie has a very diverse background in the horse world, and we are super excited to share her interview and her perspective with you all. So please stay tuned.
Thank you for listening. We really hope that you are enjoying what we're putting out because we're trying really hard. And sometimes we don't always get it right, but we're doing our bestest.
Just crying every day and night.
Crying in the shower. No, really. We're really having a good time. And we've had such amazing feedback so far. So thank you for all the 5-star reviews and for the feedback. We really appreciate it. But if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss when new episodes are released, and follow us on social media for a lot more chaos and updates in between episodes.
Thank you guys. We love you.
Bye.
Bye.